normally in a D&D campaign, you think of the forces of good as being this monolithic block, and they're all together working in unison to fight evil. But that's not necessarily the case, and that is especially true in the world of Greyhawk, and that's what I would like to talk about today on Greyhawk Grognard. It's easy to make the assumption that when you're in a fantasy campaign setting, that you have all these good aligned nations, and they all get along well, and they're all working together to fight the common evil, like Ayuz or the Great Kingdom or giants in the Crystal Mist Mountains or whatever. But that's not at all the case, especially in the world of Greyhawk, which is one of the things I love about it. It's messy this way. It breaks the expectations that, if you're two lawful, good, aligned nations and you're right next to each other, you must, be allies. That is not at all the case. Take, for example, the Yeomanry, which is adjacent to the Kingdom of Keoland. They're both good aligned states. One is, I think, more chaotic good than the other, and but they're still on the side of good. And yet, when the Yeomanry broke away from Keoland, they closed their border. And they're not at all on friendly, good terms like Keoland is with some of its other neighbors, like the Ulic States or Sterich or someplace like that. So there's a great example of we have two good states, and yet they're not friendly at all. You can't even cross the border between them. And that's, of course, in the campaign setting, it's due to the historical nature of the fact that, Keoland had conquered the Yeomanry at one point, and then they let it go, and then that's when the Yeomanry closed its borders, because they don't want to, they still resent the time that good aligned Keoland had conquered good aligned Yeomanry. Another example of this is in the two Urnst states, the County of Urnst and the Duchy of Urnst. Not only is there a lot of intrigue going on between the two of them, because the Duke of Urnst wants to marry his son to the Countess of Urnst so that they'd have one big unified country. So there's that. You got that level of intrigue going on there, where the Duke is scheming to essentially take over the county through marriage. But both of them are also somewhat hostile towards Nyrond, because they're both afraid that Nyrond is going to gobble them up like they used to. Because it used to be the fact that the two Urnst states belonged to Nyrond, and then they broke free, and along with the Theocracy of the Pale, which we'll get to in a second. So so they're immensely distrustful of Nyrond, even though they still send Nyrond troops to help in their fight against the Great Kingdom. That's kind of an example of they're working in their self-interest, helping a potential enemy against an actual enemy. So it's more like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's why they're helping Nyrond. They're not because they love Nyrond so much, but because they're afraid of the Great Kingdom, because the Great Kingdom had also at one point ruled over them. Then you have the Theocracy of the Pale, which is a whole nother story. They're more lawful neutral than lawful good, but they do have good tendencies. And they're, because of their religious fanaticism, they're at odds with all of their neighbors. They have border skirmishes with Nyrond. They don't get along well with Ten. There's a lot of tension on the borders of the Theocracy, and a lot of it is born of the fact that because it is a theocracy, they distrust anyone who doesn't worship their version of Foltest. And so you have all these, but they're still on the side of good. If some great supernatural evil force had, arisen to threaten Nyrond and the Pale, for example, odds are they'd probably, they might work together. They might just say, we're going to handle this ourselves, because you have that distrust. And, I love that, because that lets you work in these fissures of conflict, and where there is conflict, there is story. So, you have all these things. There's another thing that's described in the novels, in Saga of Old City, where the Count of Blemu is trying to establish his own kingdom up in the northeast part of the Flanaess by marrying his daughter to the Baron of Rattic. And then conquering the Bone March between them. So you'd have this big super state stretching from the Flinty Hills all the way to Grendet Bay. And then the King of Nyrond gets word of it and sends his agents in there to squash it and remind the Count of Blemu that he's a vassal of the King of Nyrond. So you have these intrigues going on and these rivalries happening, even between good aligned states that are threatened by a common evil. You still have all this maneuvering going on, and I think that really helps in a campaign because players aren't really going to expect a lot of that. When they if they're off on an adventure working for the King of Nyrond, and all of a sudden they're met up by a patrol belonging to the Countess of Urnst, they're going to expect to just be able to sail through. But because of that distrust between the two good nations, there could be a lot of hassles and a lot of opportunities for role-playing and misadventures and so forth. Same thing in the Blemu Hills. If you've got players up there maybe doing a Bone March type campaign, and you've got the Count of Blemu trying to work his angle with Rattic, and then somebody from Nyrond comes in. There's a whole lot of excellent role-playing in there that you can get without even the need for the evil forces to get involved. You could have all this conflict just between the sides of good, and I think that would be a really neat, refreshing change of pace in a campaign where it's always, okay, we're fighting Ayus, we're fighting the humanoids of the Bone March, we're fighting the humanoids of the Po March, we're fighting the giants and the Crystal Mists. You can work in these good rivalries to kind of spice up the campaign and throw the PC some curveballs. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this one. Just a reminder, people in the Patreon get to see these videos 2 weeks early. Let me know what you think in the comments. Have you ever worked these angles of the rivalries between good aligned nations? If so, let me know. Let me know what you think, and have a wonderful day. I will talk to you later.
Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.